Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Wednesday, November 28, 2018, Mike Espy lost in Mississippi to Cindy Hyde-Smith. We'll break down what happened. Did black folks turn out in record numbers? We'll also tell you about some sisters who also won critical judicial races there in Mississippi. Speaking of judicial races, in the United States Senate, Thomas Farr, the voter suppressor in chief, also someone who's aligned with white supremacists, moves closer to joining the federal bench. The question is the only black Republican in the Senate, Tim Scott of South Carolina, will he have the courage to vote against Thomas Farr? Also, two CBC members are in the House leadership. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries beat out Congresswoman Barbara Lee to be the head of the Democratic caucus, and also Jim Clyburn, of course, was elected the House Whip. We'll also tell you who's going to be the new chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. The case out of Alabama we're still talking about, that is E.J. Bradford Jr., the black man with a gun killed at a mall in Birmingham. Now cops are apologizing to his family. We will explain and talk with Ben Crump, the family attorney, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Also, a former police chief in Florida is sitting his punk ass in jail. Why? For framing black folks. That's right, making things up. Ooh, I can't wait till he's on the yard in the prison. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
68,585 votes. That was the difference between Cindy Hyde-Smith and Mike Espy when it came to who was going to win the U.S. Senate race, the closest U.S. Senate race in Mississippi in 30 years. Mike Espy, he outperformed President Barack Obama as well as Hillary Clinton, but it wasn't enough in that particular state. And this is what Mike Espy said last night at his concession speech.
All the young people that got involved and were energized by this campaign, I want to just tell you, continue to believe. So we'll leave the stage now, but this is a movement, and this movement is not going to end for a new Mississippi, a more united Mississippi, and a Mississippi where everyone, regardless of race, a party, a religion, feels their worth. Thank you so much.
Now, when I talked to Mike Espy, he said that 500,000 votes was going to do it. If you look at the vote totals, 479,278. That's exactly what Cindy Hyde-Smith received. Mike Espy received 410,693. African-American turnout was up in a huge way, but it wasn't enough. But here's the issue. There are 800,000 eligible and registered African-Americans in Mississippi. 800,000. If Mike Espy was able to get, let's say, 60% of African Americans who are eligible to vote, combined with about 125,000 whites, Mike Espy is a United States Senator. Joining us right now to talk about Mississippi and exactly what took place, there is the head of the NAACP. I want to go to him right now. First of all, Doc, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Corey Wiggins. Sorry about that, Corey. So, Corey, first and foremost, let's talk about last night, your assessment. I know folks are still crunching the numbers, but give me a sense of what black turnout was like.
Look, this is what we know. Black turnout for this election was higher than our last midterm. We look at some counties, it was numbers that were almost Obama-like in some of those numbers. So black turnout was there. Folks were at the polls. Leading up to the race, a lot of folks were engaged, knocking on doors, getting people to turn out to vote. And The other point I want to point out, too, is that even while we didn't win the race with Espy, we had a lot of down ballot races, judicial races that we did really well in and that we won, and we're excited about that as well.
But let's talk about crunching those numbers, though, because when you talk about there were some areas where they expected a larger turnout. And again, if you look at raw numbers, there were some places where they outperformed November 6th. But still, when you talk about power that is untapped, you still have folks who didn't go to the polls. And if you get 800,000 African Americans alone who are registered, again, if Espy is able to drive 50% of them, plus with white turnout, like Espy wins.
Yeah, so I think there's two factors. One, as we did see increased voter turnout among blacks in Mississippi, and we got to continue to grow that. I think this race is a point in time that helps us and support us and continue to do that. The other point is, and quite frankly and truthfully, progressive whites in Mississippi have to turn out and have to organize as well. When you look at this race and we look back and reflect on the data and the numbers, we understand we can always grow black turnout, but we really got to figure out a way to talk to progressive whites in Mississippi, understand that why this public policy and progressive sort of policy is important, and we need to elect leaders that support that.
Well, that was one of the points that I had made when I said, look, you're going to have white folks who are progressives talk to white folks in places like Mississippi and challenge them when it comes to voting against their own economic interest. Because, again, you have 2 million plus folks there who are in Mississippi. You've got, again, a 1.2 million or so poor folks in that state. And the question is, will the policies of Cindy Hyde-Smith and Donald Trump will help those broke white folks in Mississippi?
No, it won't. And it's quite simple and that's direct. And that's why we got to figure out a way and work with our colleagues and our friends who support the work that we're doing here in Mississippi in a way to support them in talking to other white Mississippians to support an agenda that benefits them. Right now, folks are not voting their interests. They're not voting their economic interests. They're not voting their interests as relates to the healthcare policies that exist and that's being passed, tax policy. And that's a problem and that's a challenge and that's something that we have to face and work with other progressive whites and organizations here to support them in their organizing.
Henry, go to my iPad, please, and you'll see two photos of Faye Peterson and Adrienne Wooten. They are two African-American women. They're in Hinds County Circuit judges. You now have 4 African-Americans who are judges there. And again, that's one of the issues that we're talking about there, that even though you might not have folks who win these top-of-the-line races, the down-ballot races are also critically important.
Very important. And when you're talking about building power, systemic long-term power, infrastructure matters in terms of getting people out on doors, but those races that are down ballot races are as equally important. We had an African-American woman who was elected to the the Mississippi Court of Appeals. We had other progressive candidates that were elected to other judicial positions here. And so when we're talking about building long-term systemic power, that is a step towards the direction that we're trying to go here in Mississippi.
All right, then. Corey, we certainly appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much. And we definitely still want to be able to crunch those numbers and take a look at what they offer. Again, Cindy Hyde-Smith, those 2 years. So you're going to have, again, in a couple of years, the election for that Senate seat there. Thanks a lot.
So, thank you. I appreciate you.
I want to go to my panel right now. Ryan Minor, editor-in-chief, a minor detail and host of a minor detail radio podcast. Pastor Shannon Wright, third vice chair, Maryland GOP. Dr. Cleo Monago, socio-political analyst and activist. Shannon, I'll start with you. It is interesting when you look at 300,000 folks in Mississippi who are uninsured. When you look at governor refusing to expand Medicaid there. When you look at the education stats, we look at the education stats, the health stats. When you look at all those things, Mississippi literally is 45th to 50th. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I hear Republicans ask the question, well, to black folks, why do you vote Democrat? Look, flip it. You got to ask white folks in Mississippi, why are you voting Republican when you are literally 48th to 49th in education, 40th to 49th or 50th in health care, and then, of course, when you talk about economic development, about 45, 46.
You know, it's hard to figure out for me. I know you're going to say it's not hard to figure out at all. But for me, it's hard to figure out why there are so many issues in certain states and certain parts of the country. Now, when you look at folks and you say, well, why vote Republican? If school choice worked the way it was supposed to, that would be an alternative. That would be a solution as far as education. And it seems to me that one of the best ways, long-term, not short-term, but long-term, to turn around a lot of the economic issues and situations and generational issues is quality education.
Well, that's sure ain't the case in Mississippi.
Clearly,
I mean,
but I said if it worked the way it's supposed to, I did qualify it that way.
And one of the things I find to be real interesting when you talk about Mississippi. I was watching a video. Actually, Alexandria Pelosi had gone there. And a number of people, they were saying, well, look, we believe in God. I'm going, okay, I believe in God too, but y'all broke as hell. And again, when you look at, and the fact of the matter is, it amazes me when I listen to people in Mississippi talk about, well, we don't want any help from the federal government. Do they know the percentage of their budget comes from the federal government? Your thoughts?
I'm just trying to figure out how Republicans nominated somebody like the candidate they did, who's now the next U.S. Senator.
Remember, the governor picked her.
He didn't even want her. I mean, they didn't even want her, and then Trump was soft on her until the very last minute when he saw the polls squeezing together, closer and closer. And finally he said, well, what does he say? I got to do the tweets, and I got to show up. And I think that at the very last minute he came down and decided, look, here I am, she's my girl, and I'm just trying to figure out why they keep electing bad people to office.
I mean, she's not the brightest bulb in a dark room.
No, she's not. In fact, the governor thought, well, maybe I'll appoint myself. They got her. It looks nice, but the Republicans today are going full force and saying she's the first woman elected to the federal delegation from the state of Mississippi, since Reconstruction? That's not really something to celebrate in the Trump era.
Cleo, again, the race is an issue. I don't care what you say. Mississippi, unlike really any other state, I mean, it breaks very clearly white, black.
Can I finish shaking my head first? Okay, I'm finished. I'm shaking my head because both of you said, or I'm paraphrasing, but you both imply, I don't get it. You know, why are people supporting Hyde Smith or Smith Hyde, whatever the lyncher's racist woman's name is?
Hyde Smith.
Okay. Why? And you know why. Come on now. You know why. You know why too. So why don't you just say it?
So since
I mean, it can't change or transform or be possibly different because these poor white people, for a long time now, but especially recently, are concerned about losing white power. Concerned about people that look like them not being top dog no more. So all this logic about health care and resources, that's logical, and that does make sense. Again, I mean, I know I'm being redundant because I've said this a million times, but these people are like, look, I'd rather be broke with no teeth, and I mean teeth with an F, because they so broke they can't afford the TH. That I'd rather be broke with no teeth than have to look up again. Obama and Michelle already scared me to death because they made it clear that we're not superior, and we couldn't afford that psychologically. We need to feel superior, dang it, no matter what. If we broke lights out, we need that illusion of superiority symbolically to get up in the morning.
So that illusion is strong enough to replace what's not in your wallet?
Well,
yes.
Well, I mean, that's a rhetorical question, right?
But see, that's why I said I'm confused, because see, it's not that strong for me.
Well, you ain't a white woman.
Amen. Amen. Okay.
A woman, a man, a cat, a dog, you ain't a white woman. We're talking about the question is, why are white folks doing what they're doing? Wasn't that the original question that you said you didn't understand, right?
All right.
So let's just say it.
Was that actually your question?
So white man, why don't you translate for us why we won't say that white folks want to keep and sustain power and keep saying, I don't know why they keep doing this. And even the race that just happened in Georgia, the race that just happened in Florida, the race that just happened in Mississippi, is cut down racial lines.
But I also do believe, and I want y'all to talk about this, I do believe that Democrats have to have a courage to go in front of white folks and say it. I mean, look, when President Obama...
Say what?
No, here's what does it mean. When President Obama was in the White House, I said to him directly, I was like, look, you keep going to suburban Virginia and Ohio touting the Affordable Care Act. I'm like, no. You need to go to the brokest, reddest, most conservative, sickest part of Mississippi and look them in their eye and say, you know I passed this bill for folks like y'all. But as long as Democrats basically want black folks to do the heavy lifting, well, we can get black turnout. No, it's white folks there who could be able to turn out as well. You have to be willing to actually do that. And so here you got 2020 coming up. Oh, I can't wait to see if Elizabeth Warren, if Bernie Sanders, if Tim Ryan, if he runs, if Mitch Landrieu, if he runs, if they're going to be willing to go in front of conservative, broke white people and speak to them directly about their interests like they would in front of black folks. I'm just curious if they're going to have, first of all, we know Donald Trump not going to do it. Because in fact, the only black people you see at his rally is like one or two brothers who stumbled into his rally who's right behind him, or you got Cuban Zirconia and Cotton who might show up there, but that's about it.
But did Obama take your advice?
No.
So we have to go back into that abstract issue of why.
Because here's why. Because in America, first of all, America has been a white nation, period. You can dance around it. And so we, like, perfect example, they would say a group of black pastors met with Trump. But you won't see the headline, a group of white pastors met with Trump. Because in America, anything that has been considered normal and mainstream is really white. And so we have not gotten used to literally saying white people. I mean, if you go on cable news, mainstream, you say white people, well, I'm going, why y'all freaking out?
It just happened.
But we will, but it
wasn't a big freak.
No, we do it.
But it was a
no. What I'm saying is, what happens is, we can talk very clearly about African Americans, Latinos, which Republicans will call identity politics, but we're reaching the point where white folks, we're going to start using phrases like white folks, white voters, because that is still a block of voters, and people are unwilling to say it, and that's why, Cleo, that's why they're unafraid. They're unafraid to go in front of white people and say, listen up, white people. But they'll happily bring a gospel choir to a room full of black people.
Well, but even when Trump mentioned, I'm just mentioning this because you mentioned it, even when Trump met with ministers, he met with confused, black on Thursday, white the rest of the week.
No. I agree with
ministers.
that. But here's my point. My point, though, is how it's framed. Media will say Trump met with a group of black pastors. You will never, ever hear a cable host or a newspaper editor put as a headline, Trump meets with white pastors. Never. Even though in the room ain't nothing but white people.
Didn't Trump meet with the pastor or his top guy that he relies on for religious advice inside the black community was the guy that...
Daryl Scott from Cleveland.
The guy that made up his credentials?
Oh, no, that's Mark Burns. That's Mark Burns, South Carolina.
I see him like...
Now, you ain't see... Mark don't get invited to the White House. Okay? Daryl Scott from Cleveland gets invited to the White House. But they don't invite Mark.
Yeah, that was the guy that got up out of the interview because they called him out on it.
Right. He left his own church.
Yeah.
He left the CNN dude at his own and got in his car and left. I ain't never left my place and left somebody in my place. I'm like, y'all can pack up and leave.
Well, that dude was biologically black, right? But you're talking about white folks.
Well, but again, no, seriously. This is, I think, and again, Shannon, Brown, I love you to speak to this. I think in order for, you're going to have folks willing to say, white people, white voters. I don't think they're going to do it. But that's what's going to have to happen. Shannon, go ahead.
I'm laughing at you. That's what I'm laughing at.
But that's super black.
I'm not ashamed to say that.
That's super black.
It's the truth, though.
So, but here's the thing. I'm at an age and a stage where I don't care if you're pink or purple. I'm going to tell you you're pink or purple, but that's me. It takes a certain amount of don't give a crap to be able to go in a room and call that room whatever it is. And most folks aren't there yet. You got to get to a certain age, a certain checking account, a certain something where you don't care enough that you're willing to call it whatever it is.
No, you don't. No, you
well, it
don't.
depends on how you got the money.
Because look
you
at
got
the
the money from white folks, you're still going to be silent.
Because look at the amount of folks that don't do it.
Yeah, no, because
so obviously they got to get somewhere to do it.
We're still operating as if, oh, no, I can't actually say that because, you know what, I'm going to isolate people over here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it. And so I'm telling you right now, I would love to see Democrats actually have the guts to go into Mississippi and bring white people with them to travel around Mississippi. You talk to white people in Mississippi. But so Tom Perez, that's your homework assignment. Let's talk about what's happening, of course, in Georgia. Organizing and legal challenges continue, folks. Stacey Abrams, of course, she lost the governor's race there. But the political organization backed by Abrams filed a federal lawsuit Tuesday challenging the way Georgia's elections are run. In the suit, they charged the state election officials grossly mismanaged the 2018 election, in a way that deprived some citizens, particularly low-income folks and black folks, of their right to vote in violation of their constitutional rights. Now, this will take a while to be resolved. But again, to knock down those barriers, you must take folks to the polls. The problem is who will be ruling. That is, who will those judges be? In the case of North Carolina, Trump desperately wants Thomas Farr to be on the federal bench. He, of course, is the what they call the vote suppressor in chief. Now, all Democrats today voted no when it came to cloture, and so all the GOP voted yes. Jeff Flake, of course, and Tim Scott, of course, also voted to end cloture. That is, to allow the vote to take place. It was 50-50. It was a 50-50 vote. Vice President Mike Pence broke the tie. Now it will go to a final vote. The cloture vote was to end debate. It will go to a final vote. The question is, will Senator Lindsey Graham, how will he vote? How will Senator Tim Scott vote? Now, Graham has said he is not going to vote on any nominations until the head of the CIA meets with the Senate over the death of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Also, Jeff Flake of Arizona said he is not going to vote for anything until they deal with the issue of protecting Robert Mueller. Go to our panel. Weigh in on this, because so now you got Flake saying what he's saying, I don't believe him. Lindsey Graham saying what he's saying, I don't believe him. And I don't think Senator Tim Scott is going to vote against Thomas Farr, because previously, when they had a federal nominee who had some racial issues, Scott spoke up. Other senators then said, okay, I'm with Tim Scott. They withdrew his nomination.
Roland, every time that the country gives Jeff Flake or Lindsey Graham the benefit of the doubt, they do the wrong thing. Look what happened exactly with the Kavanaugh hearing. We were led to the final hour believing that Jeff Flake could be the hero. He wasn't.
He's got the perfect last name.
Yeah,
Flake.
And he totally bungled that. And I'm sure that you've discussed that many times on this panel. We don't need to discuss that any further. But Lindsey Graham, are you serious? Here's a guy that I once thought that had a moral compass. Sadly, when Senator McCain passed,
only when John McCain was alive.
Well,
so it seemed like McCain had the moral compass. Graham was just drafting on him.
We can talk and we can hope, and you know the old saying that I can't repeat on the show that my grandfather taught me: you can wish in one hand and the other hand and see which one fills up quicker. But I got to tell you, Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake are not going to be reliable in the now, tomorrow, the next day, to be a reliable vote to do the moral thing.
This is a man, Shannon, who has ties to white supremacists. This is a man who is appointed to a seat that both Republican senators blocked 2 black women. This is the longest open seat on the federal bench. They have been, so basically what Barr and Tillis did, they more than fill the shoes of Jesse Helms, who often do the exact same thing, will hold a seat open for years to prevent Democrats from appointing somebody. And again, looking at Thomas Farr's record, it is an atrocious record.
So I'd like to hope that, unlike Ryan here, that Lindsey Graham would actually, hold to what he's saying and not vote to support, not vote to move it forward. I'd like to think that there are some folks with some moral compasses, and I'd like to think that Tim Scott would find a way to actually vote what he knows to be correct. Not saying I do believe those things are going to happen, but I would like it if they did. I can't imagine what it must be like to be that one person that folks are looking at you to say, you should not support this, but knowing your whole political career is based on going along to get along and having the intestinal fortitude to be able to not do it.
Hell, at least you're going to look to Senator Tim Scott, you safe. I mean, bottom line is, what, he's going to have to run in 4 years?
People will forget by then, but
also, rekindle the spirit of Edward Brooke, Republican from Massachusetts, who had the nerve, who had the audacity to stand up to his party when necessary. And so again, you're the only black Republican senator there. You're the only one.
Yep.
Thomas Farr's record is very clear. The man has no business being a federal judge for life.
I agree, but it's whether the folks that can make
I'm going to go and text Tim Scott that right down now.
Whether they have the ability, the inner strength to vote the way they should.
Cleo, go ahead. I'm going to text Scott. I'm going to see if he's going to come on the show tomorrow, too.
Roland, when was the last time you saw a high-profile or relatively high-profile black Republican do the right thing instead of the white thing?
Again, Senator Tim Scott, previously, when that was a federal judicial nominee who had a racial past, he stepped up and said, I got issues with this guy. And several Republicans were like, okay, that's it, we good. All right, take his name off. I ain't voting for him either. And they withdrew his nomination.
What year was that?
Oh, this was this year.
Okay.
This was this year. And so what I'm saying is, Farr's nomination should not have even gotten to this point. Should not have gotten to this point.
And he has the ability to take that same.
If Senator Tim Scott, this is my issue. This is the power he has. If Senator Tim Scott says Thomas Farr should not be a federal judge, it's done. It's done. Sure. His white United States senators are not going to sit there and say, well, damn, we're gonna go ahead and just defy the only black Republican senator we have. And I'm sitting there saying, Scott, use your damn power. Go ahead. Use your power. Use it.
White conduct.
I'm just saying, use it. You got it, use it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, use it. So again, we'll see what happens tomorrow, folks, when it comes to whether or not they're going to vote in that particular case there for Thomas Farr. Again, a man who has no business being on the federal bench. I'm going to go to a break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk new leadership among House Democrats. We're going to also talk about this case out of Alabama as well. Lots of stuff to talk about more right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
When I look at the future, it's so bright, it burns my eyes. Oprah Winfrey.
HBCU Giving Day. University today is Fisk University. www.fisk.edu. Of course, located there in Nashville, Tennessee. Again, we want you to support your HBCUs, especially all of you graduates. Of course, the famous alumni, the Fisk Jubilee Singers. Of course, we know that. Also, Robert Abbott, who founded the Chicago Defender as well. So please support Fisk by going to fisk.edu. All right, let's talk about Democrats, folks. Hakeem Jeffries of New York. He defeated Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California to be the chair of the House Democratic Caucus today. Jim Clyburn, he has the votes to become the majority whip. Also, Karen Bass is the CBC elect chair. Of course, CBC has 52 members, and they have the largest caucus in the House. And of course, Nancy Pelosi, she also got the most votes on the Dem side. The question is, though, when it's time to vote for Speaker of the House, will she actually get the majority of the votes? 238 Democrats will be there. If you have enough folks, Democrats who say they won't vote for her, well, we already know Republicans are not going to vote for her. What's going to happen? I want to go to our panel here. Here's the thing that people also don't understand. The Constitution does not say specifically that to be a Speaker of the House, you have to be a member of the U.S. House. Anybody can literally be Speaker of the House. There's nothing that's there. Clearly, Democrats want to hold the line. Nancy Pelosi is extremely strong. She's been cutting various deals. You have Jeffries, who beat Lee. Clyburn, who is now majority whip. But here's the thing. By Jeffries beating Lee, now granted, Jeffries is young. By beating Lee, you don't have Lee was trying to become the first black woman to be in the leadership of the Democrats. So you got Clyburn, you got Pelosi at the top. You're going to have Steny Hoyer, majority leader. You're going to have Jim Clyburn, whip. And you're going to have, of course, head of the House Democratic Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries. They're going to have to explain it to do, Shannon, to black women.
A little bit. You know, there's a lot of things that are not going on in a way that makes sense. Everybody talked about this blue wave that happened and that it was mostly women that came out and vote. Now, you would think that from the results of the election would be fresh enough in folks' mind that they would understand that there are certain demographics that they had not before realized how much they needed to actually listen to. You would have thought some of them lessons would have been learned since, you know, November 6th wasn't that far in the past. But sometimes folks got to get slapped down a couple times before they really feel it.
You have, of course, Democrats who are being very loud, Ryan, when it says they don't want Pelosi. Bottom line is she gets the vote.
It was always going to be Pelosi, although I wanted to see the first Speaker of the House fudge That would have been a great move. But I got to say, Hakeem, he's one of my favorite congressmen, and I think he's on the path to one day be Speaker. I think that would be I think that's probably one of his goals. Pelosi's going to get the votes. She is a street fighter. Even though she looks straight out of the Fountainhead Country Club, her and good old Steny from Maryland's 5th District, who will never get rid of him. As a Marylander, I can say that they will have to take him out like Robert Byrd in a box. And look, Pelosi is a formidable political operator. She's been doing this for a long time. And I think that they have to pay very close attention to the Black Caucus. I think that I think that Pelosi's eyes are going to be opened a little bit stronger this year, because there's a lot of Democrats still that say anybody but Nancy Pelosi. I'm one of the people that said, I think we can find somebody a little bit better than Pelosi.
All right, Cleo?
I'm intrigued with the fact that the black members of Congress has expanded and has never had the numbers that they have now.
Yeah, 52.
And I want to see if this will trickle down to some positive transformation on behalf of black people in terms of the issues that we face, including getting black people to be more excited about the concept of voting, the concept of having a collective power as a black group in this country. And if the Congress is going to actually speak to issues, because we all know that, well, I shouldn't say what we know, but just because they're all black physically, don't mean they all going to operate in ways that are going to be beneficial to the black collective. So hopefully,
yeah, because look, you were elected by constituents, 700,000 people in districts. You take a Sanford Bishop, his district is far more conservative than a Maxine Waters district. How he votes on issues is totally different than how she is going to vote. Or take a Hakeem Jeffries, he's considered to be more of a moderate member compared to a Barbara Lee, who's considered to be more left. And so you have all of those actually go into it that people have to actually consider. What will be interesting to see, though, now the Democrats control the House, they now have the power to actually pass bills. The question is, what kind of bills will we actually see? What kind of pressure will they put on the Senate to then also try to get that bill passed as well? So that's one of the things that we're going to be able to see and check that out as well. So we're just waiting to see what happens there. And again, what's going to happen, of course, when Congress comes, when the new Congress is sworn in January 3rd, then you'll actually see the vote take place when it comes to whether or not Nancy Pelosi will be the Speaker of the House. Our cameras are going to be there on January 3rd when the CBC, they have a separate event as well where they do a swearing in. It's all ceremonial, but they have a whole program there as well that we'll be hearing from the head of the CBC. And so we'll be live streaming that event right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. So that'll take place again on January 3rd. All right, folks, let's now go to Alabama, where a story that so many people were shocked over the holiday weekend, where Emantic E.J. Bradford, 21 years old, was at a mall there in Hoover, Alabama. Well, shots were fired. A couple of people were shot. Police busted into the mall, and they shot Bradford in the face. They initially said that Bradford was the shooter. Well, then he wasn't. And so today, the police department finally apologized to the family for initially calling him the actual shooter as well. Now, Bradford was a caretaker for his father, who was a former police officer who was battling cancer, and he also worked full time. Now, he was initially called an Army veteran, but the Army said he did not complete basic training and was never certified as an officer. Now, Bradford did have a concealed weapon permit for the gun he was carrying that day. And joining us right now to talk about that is Ben Crump, who was hired by the family to be their attorney. And so, Ben, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, thank you, Roland, for talking about this important issue. You know, it's unbelievable that on Thanksgiving night, his parents got this news, not from the police having the courtesy to notify them, but they heard about it first on social media. So them finally coming to meet with us and in person apologizing to this brokenhearted, devastated mother and father was a first step. But as we've been saying all along, Roland, they don't need to say no more. Just release the video, because the video is going to tell us the thing that happened that night leading up to his, what we believe, unnecessary death.
Again, when we talk about, so first of all, have the police actually, have they provided a timeline of exactly what happened that led to E.J. Bradford being shot and killed?
They have not, Roland. They haven't told family anything. Several witnesses in that mall has approached family, have called my law firm and given their accounts, and all of them to a one say that E.J. Bradford, he was helping people get away from the shooting. He was helping get people out of harm's way. Several people have said he saved their life. He was a good guy. And so this whole suggestion that good guys need to have guns to stop the bad guys with guns from preventing these mass shootings only works apparently if you're not black, because if you're black with a gun, the police never see you as a good guy and they shoot and kill you, just like they did Jamel Robinson in Chicago, now here with Romantic in Alabama.
Ben, hold on one second. That was a rally today, of course, there in Birmingham, and this is from one of the social media accounts. I want to take some of that. So here we go to my iPad, please.
And knock on her door to tell her, to tell my nephew.
I had to tell his daddy.
Your son is dead.
Hey.
I can't believe this. I can't believe that this happened on Thanksgiving Day. No one came to the house to tell them that his son was laying in the...
Now, Ben, do we also know were any officers wearing body cameras?
Apparently, all of them were wearing body cameras. Hoover spent a lot of money last year to make sure every officer was equipped with a body camera. And more important than that, there was mall security surveillance video, Roland, that will show us from the second EJ walked into that mall until the moment he was killed, everything he did. And we believe, like EJ family believe in his heart, it showed him doing something bad, they would have released that video already. And that's why they keep demanding the truth.
Ben, hold on one second. This is you speaking last night at a church rally last night in Birmingham.
And killed him. Shoot first and ask questions later. And this seems to be a pattern. Did any of you all hear about Jamel Robinson in Chicago?
Shot him 12 times.
A good guy with a gun who happened to be black. And maybe that's the caveat. Does America ever see that a good guy with a gun can be a black man?
No.
So, Ben, let's speak to that. When you posed the question last night to the church, does America ever see a good guy with a gun being black?
Yeah. It just follows a pattern, Roland, too many times. You remember Corey Jones in Palm Beach, Florida, Lando Castillo in Minneapolis. Anytime a black man has a gun, no matter what the situation is, police don't see them as being a law-abiding citizen with Second Amendment rights. They shoot first and ask questions later. They immediately identify them as criminals. All the witnesses who have come forward said within milliseconds, he made a decision to shoot E.J. Bradford. And they decided right then while he was on the ground, blood pouring out of his head, that they were going to make this killer cop a hero, and they were going to assassinate the character of E.J. Bradford after they assassinated him, because they plastered his picture all over worldwide media saying that they took down the shooter and that they stopped the mass shooting. And E.J.'s parents knew in their heart that their child wouldn't have killed anyone. So they knew even before the police retracted the lie that it was a lie.
All right, then. Of course, protests continue there in Alabama. Folks have been, this is some of the protest video from AL.com last night as well. And so we will certainly stay on top of this story. Ben Crump, thanks a bunch and keep us updated.
Roland, the funeral is Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time. Reverend Jesse Jackson is preaching the eulogy, and his father's battling cancer. So anybody who wants to donate, they can go to Justice for EJ on GoFundMe.com.
All right, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let's talk about this story out of Florida. As always, Florida. Here's a video of the former police chief of Biscayne Park, Florida, bragging about solving all of the burglary cases in that city.
We have a 100% clearance rate on burglary cases in the village of Biscayne Park. This is the first time that I've never ever known that to happen in any department that I've ever been in. He's a great part of the reason.
Well, here's the problem. Raimondo Tesano, he's the former police chief. His ass was lying. They actually had framed a bunch of black men for those murders. Yesterday, Raimondo was sentenced to 3 years in prison for framing the teen and others. One of the other suspects got 5 years and was deported to Haiti. The case against the teenager was dropped. See, this is what I love here. So you never hear Sheriff David Clark and all these Blue Lives Matter people talk about cases like this here.
Well, no, you're not gonna. That doesn't support the narrative. You're not gonna. But, you know, that's a case of what you do in the dark comes back to get you in the light. For real.
But gets me is you frame these. First of all, you get 3 years for framing. You were the police chief. You were the police chief, and so this goes to, again, why folks in communities don't trust cops.
It also goes to why people don't vote. Because a lot of black people, particularly black men, see these incidences and don't see any resistance to it that's effective. Because even back during the Black Lives Matters days, which is the most recent reaction to police brutality that got a lot of press, that didn't stop anything. As I told you many times, Roland, I travel a lot to different local communities, and there's local stories like this that don't make the national news. I don't know why some of them do and some of them don't, but there are stories of black men, particularly black boys and women as well, being murdered under the same circumstances that don't make the national news. But there's a vicious cycle here that I think we should look at. At some point, maybe on your show, Roland, we should look at the psychosocial effects of being black in this country and its and the attacks that can lead to shutdown, complacency, and disenchantment enough where people are immobilized and they won't go out and be powerful. For example, I've mentioned before when I was in Ferguson, right after the murder of Mike Brown, which was a majority black town, I asked them when the next election was coming up, are you going to repair this white racist imbalance and make sure there's some people who are progressive and who care about black people in power? And they looked at me like I was crazy. Power? Me? So that's the issue that we don't have time to get into right now because it's not my show. But we need to break down these issues that black people are living with. For example, one more thing in terms of black men constantly being shot and what this chief took advantage of in terms of how easy it is to criminalize black people. Even Don Lemon, of all people, said that white men were the poster children for what is really terrorism in this country. Even he said that. Yet we can't get psychologically past the perpetual myth of black men being the terrorists who often wind up dead and not white men when the cops have a gun on them. But what the final thing I want to say to make this clear is that the lack of voting that Mike Espy suffered from and other people suffer from in this country when black people are the ones that can take them over, is some black people going, what difference is it going to make? Mike Brown's dead, Sean Bell is dead, Trayvon is dead, Philandro is dead, this newest brother is dead. And what is, for example, the Congressional Black Caucus doing about it?
Yeah, but here's what I would say to those.
This is their perspective.
Right, but here's what I would say to those people. First of all, the cases of, like the case here, the case of individuals, all those folks you talked about, those are local cases. And see, the mistake is, this is where I keep saying where education, citizenship education matters. Because people, they're looking to the CBC, when the reality is, Congressman Bobby Scott had a bill passed that was signed by Obama that dealt with the whole issue of police accountability when it came to shooting deaths. Okay, that's all. They're very limited in that. That's federal authority. Police departments are governed by local. The problem, all the people in Ferguson, the problem there, a town 67% black, one black city council member, and I'm going, who do y'all think hired the police chief? The city council. Who hired the city manager? The city council. And so the problem is people keep thinking, oh, well, we're going to look here, here, here. No. It's right in front of you, which is why you are now seeing progressive district attorneys being elected all across the country because folks are going, oh, wait a minute, hold up. If I want to deal with mass incarceration, that member of Congress can't do a damn thing, but that district attorney is deciding what cases to try and and what cases not to try. We discussed the shooting in Milwaukee just yesterday, where the DA said, oh, justified shooting because the man was seen trying to grab a gun. We get to finally see the video. He wasn't even remotely trying to grab a gun. I guarantee you that DA is going to have a target on his back in the next election when it comes to throwing his behind out. And so, so part of the problem is, folks, when you hear the phrase, when you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, that to me is an issue here, and not just black folks. There's a whole bunch of white folks, Latinos, not understanding. And I do believe, and this is also where I fault many folks on the national level. A lot of these national shows, they get so caught up in process, they're not actually explaining to people exactly how this country works, how politics works, actually connecting the dots.
Let me say that I agree with you, and as a white guy from Western Maryland who grew up with a majority white community, when I got to college, I went up to Pittsburgh, and I went down and where I went with a majority white. And when I got out into the real world, I moved to D.C. shortly after college, and I said, I just went through 4 years of college. I have no idea what the world is about. And I met some people, and they said, let me take you and have a real conversation about race, about politics. You think as a political science major, you know what you're talking about. You can think abstractly. Let me take you into my community. The day after the shooting happened, or with Freddie Gray, I told my wife, I said, I'm going down to Baltimore City. And she said, you're going to Baltimore City. I said, I need to know in my heart. I need to talk to people to understand what the hell's going on. And she said, I came back. I went not just 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I went to the protest. And I said, I came back more enlightened, understanding, and it changed my entire perspective, because I had no, I still don't know what's going on like I should, as somebody who's informed, inside the black community. And the more that I interact and learn, the more that I can understand these issues.
Shannon.
So, you know, we're talking about Baltimore, so it goes against some of the narrative you're saying. You've got all black folks mostly running the city.
No. It's not going against my narrative. I'm saying the same thing. That even in cities where you have all black folks who might be running something, it's still how informed are people of how these things still work. There are people who, I guarantee you in Baltimore, they run up to the mayor, what do you do about this?
Yep.
Not even realizing that's a county issue.
You've got folks that are uninformed. You've got folks that, you got a whole bunch of issues, especially in cities like Baltimore. You've got folks that are uninformed, and it seems like maybe it's better to keep them that way, because then they might ask the right questions. And folks that are in power don't necessarily want folks to ask the right questions.
Which is why I fundamentally believe you've got to have people who are saying, we got to take some stuff over. I do. I get people being angry and frustrated and giving up. I understand that. But if you showed me the opposite of you giving up, I'm at least going to make an attempt to try something. And that's why I was glad to see the brother, who's a Ferguson City Council member, run against Bob McCullough to become district attorney. And then he actually wins. Now you got a young brother who is a district attorney in St. Louis County who is making the decisions. And one of his first acts, he said, these 28 cops, I will not consider any cases that come from these corrupt cops. That's one of his first actions. And I would say to those young brothers, that's why you vote, when you're able to see a young brother like that actually win one of those races. One of the things we also talk about, well, of course, is the issue of gerrymandering. And in Wisconsin, guess what? Republicans there trying to do the exact same thing Republicans did in North Carolina. So Scott Walker got beat, a Democratic governor. So what are Republicans in Wisconsin trying to do? Trying to strip the governor of most of his powers. Trying to keep him from fixing voter suppression. Anybody?
In Maryland, we're dealing with a case of gerrymandering now, and it wasn't the Democrats that did it. That is not a...
No, but I'm asking about this here. Literally, new guy wins, and okay, we're going to strip you the power. Come on.
Come on.
That's called being so a loser.
Well,
it's called it's called trying to retain power regardless
Absolutely.
of what's happening in the material
Absolutely.
world. It's what happened in Florida and in Georgia and in Mississippi, the same dynamic. But one thing you said, Roland, that I really want to talk about is that I agree with you and most of what you said regarding the power of voting, particularly when you have the most power in the local community, can help be the architect of the politics there. I agree with you when you talk about making it intentional to, quote, grab power. Completely agree with that. But I'm also, as a person who works in social services and health and human services on a daily basis, looking at why people say, well, like the several brothers I heard recently say, oh, that ain't my business. That has nothing to do with me. Now, opposed to me just judge them, say, you stupid, you need to go vote, I engage them and go, how could you say that?
Right.
When this was in Baltimore, by the way.
Got it.
How can you say this when you're in a majority black city where you are in a position to help govern through election of what occurs here? How can you say that?
But again, that's where connecting the dots comes in. And again, the average person is walking around saying, I'm powerless. I can't do anything.
My little one vote isn't going to make a difference.
But the reality is, and I can walk folks through what happens. Look, I use Maynard Jackson all the time in my speeches. How one person who became mayor, how either had changed the future trajectory of the entire city and the state and generational lines of black people by his election. And again, I think we have to, again, go back to be able to connect those dots as well. And so that's one of the things, of course, we'll be doing Roland Martin Unfiltered. Of course, walking folks through that, getting them to understand. Because the thing I keep saying is the election is one thing. It's after the election. So, perfect example, Mike Espy, he didn't win in Mississippi. Cindy Hyde-Smith is the senator, but she still represents you. And so this is not, well, I can't talk to Cindy Hyde-Smith. No. If you black in Mississippi, give her hell. Oh, yes. Go to her office, make an appointment, and make it perfectly clear to her that you are a constituent. The same thing if a Democrat wins, if an independent wins, a Republican wins, we are still constituents. And so we have to get people to understand we must be showing up at school board meetings, at city council meetings, at county commissioner meetings, state legislature, and Congress as well, because, again, they need to understand that we actually care. Let me get a story right here, folks. Of course, that was a frightening situation in 3rd Ward, Houston, where a threat was called into the campus of Texas Southern University to the Houston Police Department. They then called TSU. TSU cleared the campus, ordered all students off of the campus. My high school, which is right across the street, is Jack Yates High School. That campus was also evacuated. No word on exactly what that threat is, but we certainly hope folks there in 3rd Ward in Houston are safe as a result. All right, folks, that is it for us. I want to thank Ryan, Shannon, and Cleo for being on the show today. Folks, don't forget you can support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, joining our fan club. I know a lot of y'all appreciate us working the show here. One of the reasons we were late today because I'm working on a series of stories on HBCU professors at Bowie State, Morgan State, and also Virginia State. And nobody else is doing a show like this. No one else is giving you these kind of stories, this kind of news. So we want you to support us by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Again, RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get by December 31st, 2,000 of our supporters. Right now, we're at about 990. Actually, I think we're at 1,000 now, so I'll double check that again. And so our goal over the next month is to add 1,000 more folks. So again, if you give 50, 20, 10, I saw people today who gave 100. That's great as well. We certainly appreciate that. So go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you also want to see, you miss the beginning of the show, we want you to go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. Please also subscribe to our channel, and we want you to turn on your live notifications. So every time we go live with our show or when we live stream from somewhere or one of our interviews, you will know immediately what's going on. Okay, folks, I got to go. Hope you have an absolutely great time. Pass the word. You know what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep being black and unapologetic and unfiltered. Now, I ain't super black like Cleo. I'm close. That's super black right here.
Yeah.
That's right. He make Black Panther look weak. That's how super black Cleo is. All right, folks. Y'all have a great one. Holla!